And now for the opposition's view. The Shadow Treasurer, Joe Hockey, is standing by with Chris Yulman. Chris.
Joe Hockey, welcome.
Great to be here, Chris.
Now, you famously said now in two speeches that the age of entitlement is over. You must be pleased that this government has gone about some of the business of that, of getting rid of the baby bonus.
Well, look, we'll look at the details of their proposal because on the one hand, they're getting rid of the baby bonus. On the other hand, they're putting it into another family tax payment. And that's what they do. They shuffle the money around and they claim to have made these gargantuan changes, but in fact, when you get down to the nitty-gritty detail, it's not there.
So you'll scrap it all together?
We will look carefully in a considered way at all the details. I mean, this is like an onion. We are going to peel it back to identify what the initiatives announced by the Treasurer today really mean, because I think it's fundamentally a dishonest budget. And as Wayne Swan said today, his budget today would be the same as his previous 5 budgets, and he's right, it's fundamentally dishonest.
If you disagreed though with every figure in it, you would agree with the fact that you believe that Australia's in some bad fiscal straits and you're going to have to work harder than Wayne Swan, so will you scrap the baby bonus?
Well, I will give you the full details prior to the election as a starting point, but the fact of the matter is that we do have a major budget crisis. There's no doubt about that, because this government is not telling the truth. I mean, there was nothing tonight that gave Australians hope that tomorrow is going to be better than today, that we're going to be a more prosperous nation. Instead, we've had, yet again, promises of surpluses, but the government delivers deficits. They've promised to reduce spending, but in fact the debt is going to pass $300 billion, and they didn't have the courage to say it in the budget papers.
Don't you think that you should change that and have the courage now to say the sorts of things that you might end, and you say the age of entitlement's over, so some of those entitlements must go. By definition, the baby bonus is one of those. Is that a good or a bad decision?
Well, we have already said, Chris, that we cannot proceed with the school kids bonus because the government said that was part of their program to redistribute the benefits of the mining boom. We said that's unaffordable because it's based on borrowed money. That is one example of an entitlement that Australia cannot afford. And we are going to be honest with the Australian people. We'll be honest before the election and we'll be honest after the election.
So if you're the Treasurer, your task in returning to surplus next year would be close a $10 billion gap in 1 year. You say you don't believe these budget figures, but let's just take that as a measure. That's a large hole to fill, isn't it?
Well, where do you get the $10 billion?
I'm getting it out of the forward estimates, 14, 15.
Oh, in order to get back to surplus. Look, the numbers produced tonight are unreal. For
bigger
example,
or smaller? You think it would be a bigger or smaller task?
I think the deficit challenge is substantially larger. I think it's substantially larger, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you one example. On the mining tax, this year, the government said originally it was going to raise $4 billion. It's raising $200 million. And I bet most of those are going on the cost of administration from the tax office. Now they're claiming, in order to get back to surplus, the mining tax is going to raise 10 times that amount in 4 years' time in the face of what the government identifies as falling commodity prices and the remaining high Australian dollar. So it is a magic pudding. It's not real. We've been proven right on every occasion that the government's dishonest in its budget, and tonight's no different.
So then the starting point is something larger than $10 billion in the first year. So what about the corporate tax base that the government's trying to have a go at? Would you support the sorts of cuts that you're seeing or the sorts of attempts by the government to claw back some revenue that the country deserves?
Well, I recognise that where there is abuse of the system, it needs to be fixed. But again, let's get to the detail. And this goes to the deceit of the government. You know, the government called a tax summit with the business community and said, look, we'll reduce company tax. You offer us these other tax changes as a way of paying for it. So the business community in good faith offered changes. The government took the changes and didn't reduce the company tax, and they've announced those changes tonight. Now they're wondering why Australian business, small and large, can't stand the government.
I'm just wondering, though, Joe Hockey, if we can't get specifics out of you, then can we get just a general principle?
Do you think that I have given you the baby bonus cut. The school kids bonus.
No, you're giving me the baby bonus. Now I'll take it.
The school kids bonus cut is an example of what we're prepared to do. So let's just.
And as an example of how hard it is, you couldn't get a baby bonus cut by your shadow cabinet.
I don't accept that. That's scuttlebutt. That's not true. I just say to you, we've got to be methodical. We've got to have a process for this. Australians expect their government to be measured and considered. That's what we're going to do.
All right, as a general principle, should those who can afford to pay their own way pay their own way?
Absolutely.
And where would that kick in? Is there a point at which you would start to apply some kind of means testing, at least, on all of the benefits that people now get?
Well, from our perspective, Australians have to live within their means, and the government has to live within its means. And I say again, I'm not going to have the sort of knee-jerk reaction that Wayne Swan does or Julia Gillard to a headline. We've had 4 hours to look at this budget. We will respond in detail, Chris. I think that's a reasonable approach, but I wanted today to be about Australia's future, to be about hope and reward and opportunity, and there's nothing there. There's no plan for Australia's future. It's just a plan for re-election.
Joe Hockey, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.